Hello, welcome to Hope Ready. I'm your host, Dr. Ellen. As the election gets closer, we are seeing a national dialogue becoming more heated, intense, and scathing at times. And I've just been thinking a lot about how, as a people of hope, we are called to live into this whole thing differently. So I thought we should talk to some of my friends. On this episode today, we have Mark Brice, who's the Assistant Director of Residential Life and Education. We have Yoli Vega, who is the Senior Academic and Career Advisor. And then we have Jill Nelson, who is one of our chaplains and works mostly with small groups. So thanks all for joining me. And I just thought you all would have great perspective to share on dignity, respect, and love. And I think we'll start with you, Mark. Let's talk about dignity and practically how we show that to our fellow humans.
Yeah. Well, one, thanks for having me here, and particularly to ask me to speak about dignity. When I think about dignity, I think about believing the inherent worth of another person. And for me, belief means not just knowing something or thinking something is true, but acting it out, having your words and your actions align with your thoughts. And I think when I think about human beings, I think about animals and how like cute dogs or like cats, which you see online, like they just, you love them. You're like, oh, it's so cute. I love these little animals. And yet when it comes to other human beings that as a Christian college, we think are made in the image of God, that have this inherent worth to them, it feels like often we can forget that, lose sight of that. And I think what's hard is that dignity is people's worth. We attach to things about our world, and a lot of those things are attached to history and context. And so when you aren't familiar with someone, you lose their historical context and even part of their current context. And so dignity isn't just like a nice word. It's a word that requires a lot of work, because you have to take time to listen and consider the fullness of another human person, as opposed to like right now we're all 2 dimensions, like, and that's pretty limited. Even 3 dimensions is limited because it ignores time. And so for practically, how do you live out respecting someone's dignity or just being aware of someone's dignity in a place like Hope? It's kind of recognizing who you are, maybe what you look like, things that you love, the activities that you're a part of, and how those are important to you, but then thinking about how maybe the access other people have to those things might not be universal, and taking the time to listen, particularly when someone says something and you're like, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense to me. Taking time to hear those words and maybe do some work, make yourself uncomfortable to understand why someone might have this perspective that just sounds different than yours.
Thanks, Mark, for that. What you said just reminds me of the importance on all of us to be critical thinkers, to not just accept things at face value, but if we're living into this well, to really think before we speak and to listen, to understand. Thanks for that. Yoli, over to you. What would you say about how we can best show respect to our fellow human being?
Mm-hmm. I want to say thanks to Mark, because there's a lot of overlap between what he shared, and I think that complements respect. I am a very amateur photographer, but one of the things that I like to think about is that seeing begins with respect. And I think we can also substitute other words for seeing, listening, hearing, interacting, having a conversation, all of that begins with respect. And that's not always easy, but I think it can kind of happen in two ways. And it actually starts with seeing ourselves. And similar to what Mark was sharing is that if I can recognize the limits of what I know and don't know, that's a starting spot, because I can respect that and work with that. And also realize that what I know and don't know is impacted deeply by my experiences and my biographies. And that's like a starting spot. So seeing who I am as an individual, but then also seeing the people around me and how I interact with them in that respect, because realizing that we are all interconnected as people of God. He created us to be connected in very deep and meaningful ways. So I think that's really important to remember. I also think about, with photography, I talk a lot about receiving. We talk about taking pictures and receiving pictures. Taking implies that I'm actually taking from you versus receiving. I'm looking at that and receiving that into my life, and to be able to say, I see your story, I see you, and I want to receive that. And while there may be things that I don't understand, how do I change that into, I can't believe you said that, to, I wonder why somebody said that, because we obviously have different experiences, and how do we work through that, I think. And then also, I think, I've learned this from great mentors in my own life, is that not taking issue with the person, but taking issue with the idea, and how do we talk through that. So when I think about respect, it's kind of twofold, starting with where I'm at, recognizing what I don't know, and then how do I see other people around me and receive their stories.
I love that so much. Thank you for breaking that down into a great perspective. I love the image of being a photographer too. That helps frame it for me. So Jill, over to you. What would you tell us about, especially in difficult times like we're in, to really live love on a daily basis?
Yeah, what a privilege to be here. Thanks, Ellen, and thank you, Mark and Yoli, because just like Yoli said, there's overlap, I think, with all three of these things. A lot of what you said was exactly where I was going to go. Is I think of three things when I think of leaning in with love in this particular time. I think the very first thing is that God is a God of story, and He creates. He steps into our story. He is the author of the story. He created this world in love, and then in love, he calls us to walk together in community. And so one way to love another person is to get to know their story. And you have to have respect and dignity to do that. You have to recognize their dignity and and respect them for who they are. And I do think it's pretty hard to dehumanize someone after you know their story. If you really know who they are, where they're coming from, and to ask good questions, and to wonder what brought them to where they are, and what shaped them. And that's a way to learn and to lean in with love. And I just think of every person that I know, their actual story, I think I do love them. I can love them because God has opened my eyes to that person. And I think that's mutual. And then I guess related to that would be then a scripture that comes to mind is James 1:19 is sometimes we say quick, slow is quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. That's another piece of leaning into someone's story, is to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And the speaking should be mostly, I think, questions, honest and curious and loving questions when in the season. I do think it's important to surround yourself with people who are gonna maybe offer different viewpoints, but also thoughtfully discuss and wonder together, and maybe call you on when you're kind of going into that piece of just going at someone with anger or frustration, to call you on it and say, hey, is this the way to enter into this? Maybe you need time, maybe you need to step back. whatever it is. I have specific people in my life. I know to whom I could go to say, yeah, let's get them. But I also know there are the people, my true mentors, like Yoli said, are people that would just be like, I wonder if we should take a second, you know? Yeah. And then finally, I guess my third point would just be to turn to the source of love. And that would be God, as in that we can lean into him, into his word, to prayer. I find myself when I get feeling chaotic right now that I do need to step back, go for a walk, spend time in nature, and for me to pray and to spend time in his word. I love this piece. This is also from James. It's from the Message. It just says, in simple humility, let our gardener, God, landscape you with his word. And that's just this beautiful idea that I can be landscaped instead of by all the stress and chaos in the world. I want to be landscaped by God first, and then lean in with love with other people.
Thank you so much. I am just so thankful, Mark, Yoli, and Jill, that you showed up on this episode today and laid down some great food for thought, some real wisdom for us. And I have hope that we can all together live into these ideas of giving dignity, showing respect, and living love on a daily basis, even in a most difficult time. And if we do that, I think we will truly be hope ready. Thanks so much for joining me.